August is Women's Month, and we at the station are showcasing powerful and resilient women. These are people who have gone through incredible trauma or change in their life, and they have come back better and stronger. This is Beautiful Make. Saray N'kusi summited Everest in May this year. This wasn't her first or her second attempt, it was her fourth. We talk about her perseverance, about what kept her going back, and what that power of spirit is that even when you're turned away 99 meters from your goal, will bring you back again to complete it. Saray N'kusi, I fangirled over you when you climbed Everest and summited. And I thought, well, that's amazing. What an incredible woman to be able to do something so powerful. But I did not know your story. Okay. And when I read it, what really struck me was not the summit. Yeah. It was that you had gone back so many times. Yeah. And for me, there's a real power in that core that you overcame what must have eventually been some form of self-doubt to go back for that final time. So let me take you back to the beginning and ask you, when did you start mountaineering?
I really started as a bucket list item with Kilimanjaro in 2012, and the idea was romantic. We will summit on the 31st and open 2013 with a bang. In the process, we started chatting about a home that we supported, which was in Benoni, Kids Heaven. And we said, why don't we actually raise money and build them an outdoor gym, which they needed, and they converted a room into a library. Okay. So there was 5 of us. We raised money, and we sold really our story, the pictures and whatever, and we went and handed over the outdoor gym, and one of the kids there came to me and said, do you really come from the township? And then I thought, why would you ask me that? And she's like, because people like us don't do things like this. And as a mom of 2, it just made me realize that it's not what I'm saying, it's what I'm showing my kids. God forbid they think help is coming from elsewhere. You know, I need them to realize that if they want something badly enough, help is coming from within. They need to actually stand up and do it for themselves. So I thought, you know, why not do the 7 summits and do it with a purpose? So I started the initiatives which you saw, Summits with a Purpose. And I've raised over R1 million since then, built 4 libraries. So I've been able to use the climb to make a difference, which has been really a blessing more than anything.
I think the problem with climbing from a public perspective is that it seems easy. There's Trek for Mandela and there are sort of charity climbing initiatives, and it looks easy. And it's not easy.
No.
And I think we saw that with Lesego Zulu and Gugu Zulu when he got into breathing difficulties in Kilimanjaro. It's not a strap on a backpack and go kind of thing. What kind of training do you have to do?
I do a lot of cardio. When I started, I was doing a lot of gym work only, and I realized that the cyclists and runners, were having a better time than I was. Let's put it that way. And then, you know, I started running, I started cycling. I don't cycle anymore because I almost died from it. It's really, I train every day. I have 1 rest day, and on the rest day I do like a body tech, you know.
That's not a rest day. I've done body tech. That's
terrible. My physio says it's not a rest day. But it's really, it's become my lifestyle. It's like if I don't train, I think there's something wrong. But 6 months before every climb, I try and train in the morning as well as in the evening. I mix it up. But you just need to be ready in terms of full body workout as well as cardio, and be able to succeed in any climbing environment. Having said that, you don't have control over the weather. So what you have control over is your readiness for the mountain in terms of technical training as well as physical training.
I'm so glad you said that, because mountaineering and swimming in that respect are very similar. Because you're only a tiny part of the equation, and you can make your part of the equation as slick and as equipped and as prepared as possible. But if the weather changes, I mean, it's the same with me. If I go on a swim, if the tide changes, or if the weather changes or the temperature drops, the swim can't happen.
Yeah.
So, and there are certain things I won't do, for example, like I won't swim in anything under 12 degrees. So I've gone all the way to Cape Town for a swim and cancelled it the night before because the temperature's gone from 16 down to 12. So when you know that you can only control yourself in that environment, how do you make peace with the elements?
For me, over time, it hasn't come as easy as just making a decision. It's the experience that actually teaches you that, especially in the mountain where you can go all the way 99 meters from the top and look up and say, if I make it, I'm not going to go back home. It's having the maturity to realize that, the mountain will always be there, but your life is fragile and you want to climb more. And for you to climb more, you need to preserve your life. It's making peace with the fact that this is not going to happen and I need to find money again and come back. The fact that it's not a cheap exercise has cost a lot of people's lives. We call it summit fever, where you're going and forgetting the fact that, the mountain, is boss at that specific point and the weather is, and you just need to pull back and go another day. It's knowing when the right time is right. I think that's what is important.
And I think of paramount importance because, as you say, you're so close, and I want to get onto that. So Kilimanjaro, I won't say it's an easy climb, but it is one of the ones that people start with when they're thinking about the 7 peaks.
Yes.
Which one was next?
So I did Kilimanjaro, and I then went and trained in France, around Chamonix.
Yes.
And I went to Everest straight after that. On hindsight, I don't think that was clever, knowing what I know today. I think people need to do a little bit more than Kili to try and attempt Everest. Then there was an avalanche. Sirac fell and killed about 16 Sherpas. I think that was a bit of a turning point for me. I mean, I saw people that had been climbing forever picking up their bags and running away from base camp. It was that freaky. It was where I went to people that had been climbing forever and asked them, what do we do? And you realize that it's a personal journey. It's a personal decision. It doesn't matter that you came with other people. You need to decide whether this is something that you want to do, And I made a decision that I want to do it because people die on N1. People died at Ellis Park. We don't stop watching the soccer. It's realizing that it was their time and not yours. And if you have a purpose, I think for me, maybe more importantly, is that it's become more than just me climbing and having fun. It's become a way of me making a difference, and I think it's a small way of living the world a little bit better than I found it. So that pushes me to really go back and think about climbing a little differently.
What is the love affair, do you think, that people have with Everest over every other mountain?
Everest is littered with testosterone. Let's just put it that way. Really, I think people. There's a lot of egos. There's I've climbed Everest. I must be strong. There's a lot of that. There's also genuinely people that just love, climbing, testing their limit, trying to see how much they can go, and there's a lot of satisfaction in terms of that. One of the things that I've seen is that really it's about 70% your mental readiness and 30% your physical readiness, but they're so linked. The more trained I am, the more mentally prepared I feel. It gives you that confidence that you can do this. But at the same time, in all things, even when you talk up to the Sherpas, the mountain and the weather needs to be respected because you need to know what you are in the bigger scheme of things. Really.
When you were at base camp, did you see a lot of arrogance?
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of checking out what experience the other people have, because at some point you start depending on each other. You're on the same rope. The slower the person in front of you is at some point, the slower you are. I mean, you saw the queues during the weather windows when everybody tried to go up. So you really can't pass the person next to you. There is that, but there's also humbleness and genuine people. I've never seen a whole bunch of people that just believe they can change the world, by just going up the summit. It's people that are very optimistic. I mean, I met at base camp, actually in Kathmandu on one of the expeditions in 2014, somebody that was born blind, and he was trying to, to climb Everest. It also humbles you to say, I was born okay. What have I done with my life? Yeah. His name was Andy. He summited, I think, Killian raised over $1 million US. And I'm thinking, what am I doing in that office?
In terms of climbing Everest, for people who've just seen you on the TV or have seen the peak, because of course in the news programs you see the peak, you see people climbing, the journey doesn't start at base camp.
No.
Where does the journey start?
The journey really starts from here. You fly into Kathmandu, beautiful city littered with century-old buildings and temples. And then from Kathmandu, you fly into Lukla, which is the most dangerous airport in the world.
Oh, good.
As if Everest is not enough. But the reality of an Everest climb, it's about 8 weeks. Every day is an adventure. That's the other thing. I went back, did the same route, but every day was different. It wasn't the same as the previous year. You obviously track all the way through the tea houses, where you spend time with the local people, amazing people, very humble people, all the way up to base camp. You share your room with people all the way up to base camp. When you get to base camp, voila, you're given a tent to yourself. So that is fun, at least for me. And then from base camp, obviously, you have to change what you use. You suddenly start using crampons. Through the Kumbu Icefall, you start using your carabiners. Now you need to hook yourself up. The game changes. And that's why it's important to know as you go up, are you going to run as fast as somebody that's going to the next village? He's only going there and going back. You need to preserve your energy. You need to have strategies, knowing that your journey needs to be for the summit, really.
So the first attempt was scuppered by an avalanche.
Yes.
And the second,
Yeah.
what happened there?
So the second attempt was 2015. I went all the way up to Camp 2.
Yeah.
We arrived at Camp 1, and after getting to Camp 1, we were on an acclimatization hike. And the team leader said, I'm giving you until 2 o'clock to get to Camp 2. When you get to Camp 2, or if you're not at Camp 2 at 2 o'clock, you need to turn around and come back to Camp 1. So we all left our sleeping bags, because the plan was we were going to sleep at Camp 1. As we were going up, there was 9 of us.
Yeah.
Only 4 people made it to Camp 2. So 3 guys were quite fast.
Yeah.
They were ahead of me. My shepherd said, if you stay with these guys, you're also not going to make it, so let's go. So him and I left the other guys with their own shepherds. And as we were walking on the Western Kum, so this is really, it's ice. It's a river, because it's so cold. You're walking on ice. It started shaking. And it was like cracking. So he turned around and put his carabiner onto my harness so that we can, we hooked each other up, we can support each other. And he's like, Sarah, we need to jump. It sounds crazy now, but then I was like, he's confident, he knows what he's doing, he had 22 years experience, we're jumping. So I'm watching him so that if he jumps on one side, if the ice opens up a crevasse, we need to jump to the same side. We can't jump onto different sides. Felt like 5 minutes, I promise you, but apparently it was less than that. And at this time, we don't know whether it's an avalanche, it's an earthquake. We didn't even think it was an earthquake. I remember we spent time arguing what it was. And then it stopped, and there was dead silence. As soon as it stopped, because the earthquake had shaken the mountains around us, so we were between Everest, Lhotse, and Nomtse, which are the mountains around us. They all started avalanching towards us. He started praying, and I was like, that was the most scary moment, because it was the year after the 16 guys died in an avalanche. And then once we found that we were safe, we started walking all the way to Camp 2, because it was still before the cutoff. When we got to Camp 2, had lunch, came back, we found that the crevasses had opened so that the ladders fell in, so we couldn't get to Camp 1. And we made our way back to Camp 2, but the challenge was the avalanche covered all the flags, so you couldn't see. You had to use your walking stick or the hiking pole to figure out whether there's a crevasse, and then you walk. And we all made a long tail, like really helping each other to go. I remember we got there at night. It was like we were hungry, we were tired, because we got lost. Not lost because we didn't know where to go, but because there wasn't any straight indication whether it's safe to step. So you needed to figure out, is it safe to step or not? So we were stuck at Camp 2 for 2 nights because we couldn't go back. We didn't have any sleeping bags. I remember Sherpa going check other people's tents and grabbing what we could find. We all slept in the dining tent on the floor. I had never been cold. Like, it was, yeah. But you're also grateful that you made it out. And then I switched on my sat phone and I got messages from home like, do you need to be rescued? I'm thinking, why? Like first of all, I didn't realize how did they know what's happening. We didn't know. Then they told us it's an earthquake and so forth. And that was really the end of the expedition. We made our way to Camp 1 and we were airlifted from there, everybody. And the mountain was closed. The fact that I survived that, I went back to base camp and I found that about 18 people had died. Our dining tent had been turned into a clinic, a temporary clinic. And walking down from base camp through the Kumbo Valley onto Lukla was really sad. Houses that you found standing, people like trying to grab what they could. And yeah, it was just very sad. And I questioned whether am I doing the right thing. What is probably interesting that I should mention, the first time I went to Everest, 2 weeks before, my house was burgled into. And the thieves I had packed everything, so you just throw everything in. They took my duffel bags. So it's equipment that was worth about 80,000 Rand. So there was no way I would have been able to get that and go. And the police found them, brought everything back. So for me, it was like, it's a sign I'm meant to do this, So all these challenges, I was like, but I don't understand. I thought, I had the sign,
So what did you learn from the first and the second climb?
So when I went the first climb, I learned that, I need to do a little bit more than just gym. I trained differently. I remember when we got to base camp, I was so excited. I stopped drinking water. And I tried to do an acclimatization hike, and I had a very bad altitude sickness. Okay. So it's almost like I became complacent. Like I was so excited that I got to base camp, but forgot that my journey is really the summit. It's learning how much water I need to drink, how I need to train differently.
So it was quite a physical lesson the first time around.
Absolutely, very much physical. And picking up how the physical aspect and readiness was actually helping my mental readiness.
There was an earthquake, there was an avalanche, well, in opposite way around. And mountain climbing is not a cheap sport.
No.
And it involves an awful lot. As you say, it's kind of like you need a lot of things. For swimming, you need a cap and goggles and a costume. And even not always the costume. Yeah. But for mountaineering, you need an awful lot more stuff, and because you're taking 4 weeks at a time or 8 weeks at a time, you need to, you're out of the office, you're out of your family life, and that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough.
It is tough. That's why it's. I think it's a family sport, even though you're the only one climbing. I think you need to negotiate. You need to make certain commitments in terms of keeping them in the loop, assuring them that you're not going to risk your life. And vice versa. You actually need to know that there are people waiting for you. To be able to make certain decisions that you make on the mountain. It's important that people see how committed you are to the sport. It also hasn't been easy because, you get people didn't believe that I could do it. After the successful summit, more and more people that didn't want to talk to me are now talking to me. So I think for young girls especially, maybe even our boys, it's important to be your own cheerleader. The world doesn't owe us anything, show them how passionate and how committed you are to the cause or whatever it is that you believe in. And then they'll support you.
I remember being told when I was a very young journalist by Deborah Patter, who's now with CBS, she said, if you want something, you've got to want it the most, because other people get tired of wanting it and they look for other things. Yeah. So you've just got to keep wanting it the most and then you'll get it. And what you're saying, that's resonating with me really strongly. So you went back in 2017.
Yes, I went back.
And this should have been the time.
Yeah,
you were ready. 2 natural disasters, loads of training.
3 is a lucky number. So 2016 I didn't. I couldn't afford it. I saved up. 2017 I went back onto the mountain. oh man, everything was going according to plan until it didn't, you know. And when we got to Camp 4, which was the first time, it was the first time I saw Everest up and close. Oh, what a beauty. And our Sherpa miscalculated, you know. There was a miscalculation in terms of the weather. The weather wasn't as predicted.
Okay.
What other people that actually summited did, Wilhelmina, one of them, the fourth South African woman to summit Everest, they spent 2 days in their tent sleeping because the High Sherpa came out and said, no, it's too windy, let's get back into the tent. Our Sherpa got out and said, let's go. It's the first time I had been at that level, so let's go. I mean, he knows best.
Yeah.
And so we followed him, I followed him, I was behind, and then I took over from in front of the rest of the team. There was 3 of us. And we went all the way up. When we got to the South Summit, he was changing my oxygen bottle. And I turned and I realized that it was only the 2 of us. Everybody else had gone back. So when I asked him, he says, oh no, gone back, not strong. And I'm thinking, okay.
Wow.
And then he walks up and then I can see he's struggling because the winds were almost up 64 kilometers an hour.
That's so strong.
It is strong.
So strong.
And the ridges there are so narrow. So then I said to him, Nawang, I've got extra oxygen. I always buy extra oxygen. Yeah. So why don't we go back and we come back the next day? He's like, okay, fine, let's go back. So as we were going back, what I didn't realize as I was breathing, my breath was freezing around my oxygen mask. And this was happening over time and I didn't see it. He probably also didn't notice. My oxygen was being supplied in, but it wasn't coming in. So I was breathing in and out the same air. And at some point I said, Nawang, I feel very weak, and I fainted. That happened very close to the camp. So he dragged me, and when he got there, because of the winds, our tent had been blown off by the wind. So we lost sleeping, we lost everything, but I was unconscious anyway. So I think he thought I was dead. So he got the other Sherpas to carry me and he put me in a tent, like a makeshift tent that was there. Everybody else left, I'm made to believe. Then the next day, so I was there, I had lost my gloves, I had lost the one thing also that was a saving grace. He didn't take off my oxygen and I had extra oxygen, so he just changed the oxygen, left me there. The next day 4 Sherpas came with him, there were 5, to come and carry me down because they thought I was dead. And then I said no, like I'll walk on my own. But I was so weak and hungry, so I was like, I need food. They didn't have any. But I had a lot of goo in my pockets, so I took out the goo and I ate and I said, let's walk. Yeah. But I was weak. There was no way I could have gone back up. And I went all the way to Camp 2. We arrived there quite late in the night. And it's just, for the first time, I almost believed the people that said I couldn't make it, you know. I think that was almost like the lowest point where I'm like, were they right? You know, all along I was like, I can do this, you know, like, okay, you don't believe it, that's okay. This is my journey. It's not for you to understand or make sense of. You know, I think that was the low point. And I was airlifted from Camp 2. And it was the first time I ever had a proper chance of going up.
It was really there.
Yeah.
That was the 99 meters.
99 meters.
I mean,
but what the saving grace is just the maturity to realize that the mountain will always be there. But my life is fragile. I need to go back.
But that's amazing that you did that, because the amount of stories I've heard and I've seen where people have been like, it's so close. Yeah. I'm going to risk it. Yeah. And I've seen it in swims as well, where with 800 meters to go, people are still forcing it and forcing it and forcing it. When you came home, now they've seen you go up this dangerous mountain 3 times and come down 3 times. Yeah. How did they react when you said, I'm going for number 4?
But what is interesting is before I left, a few months before, my son was like, Mom, when are you going to climb? And I was like, do I look like I'm bored? You know, we talked about it. So my older son just turned 22 and the younger one is 16. They're at the stage where they're Googling stuff, so they come and ask me about the mountain and whatever. The other thing is, the year that I was airlifted from Camp 2, one of the guys, he wasn't in my team, that insisted on summiting died on the mountain. So it's stories that are, it's real. It's no longer, we've read about it, I know the people, and we have that honest conversation. Is that this is what happened.
But at that point, people must have been looking at you, people you love who are close to you, and going, Sarah, really? You nearly died the last time.
Yes.
There's been an avalanche, there's been an earthquake.
Yeah.
There's been either an error of judgment or just the weather's turned.
Yeah.
You've risked your life 3 times.
Yeah.
Can't you think of something to do that isn't quite as life-threatening? Or is this not maybe a sign after 3 times that it's time to hang up the climbing poles?
Well, what is interesting is I almost lost my life mountain biking. This is when I was preparing to go in 2017.
Okay.
I was doing a stage race, and on the second day I didn't realize that I had lost my back brakes. So coming down the mountain, when I tried to brake, I fell off and I woke up 3 weeks later in Mill Park. So I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I think that put a lot of things into perspective for my family. Here I go, I climb, and what almost killed me is a mountain bike. I think what is important also with my family is sitting down and like at the beginning of the year, I sat down with my sons. These are the things that I want to do. What is it that you want to do? And how can I support you? And how can you support me? So I think that exercise puts a lot into perspective, So when I'm away, what will you be doing? How can we, like to plan together? And that's why I say it becomes a family sport rather than just you. Yes, you're the one summiting, but it's a success or a failure or whatever it is for everybody there.
So time 4, earlier this year, May 2019.
So this year, what I did differently was I went with Noah, Hannah, amazing guide, and we sat, we planned. We actually made a conscious decision that we'll go with the first window, which is normally for very experienced climbers.
Okay.
And he said, if we go for this one, we need to hit and run. So I'm giving you 12 hours to go to the summit and back. If you are not on the summit in 12 hours, I'm turning you back. I don't care how much money you paid me, unless if you're 10 minutes away from the summit. So we all summited within just above 11 hours. I didn't worry about the summit. I worried about Camp 1. When I got to Camp 1, I worried about getting to Camp 2. Okay. When it got tough, I worried about a few steps from me. I was so conscious of where I ended in 2017 that, a step further than that is a win. And I celebrated that.
A lot of people say, best part of travel is the journey, not the destination. But the destination is Everest.
Yeah.
When you hit the summit, what went through your head there?
Initially, I wanted to verification that this is indeed the summit, because as you go up, the shepherd said, it's just there, and you get there, it's like it's not. There's another ridge. Until I went to the end, I'm like, okay,
that
can't
is
go
it.
anywhere.
Yes.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I sat down. I don't know if you saw my summit pictures. It was like, it was just emotional. It's beautiful. The sky, or the clouds are, at the bottom. We always say the sky is the limit. Hell no, I'm above the sky, It's like, and it's just a humbling moment of almost introspection and appreciating the beauty.
You've raised over R1 million. Why the specific organizations that you've raised the money for? Why them?
I think because I know that I'm able to do what I'm able to do because somebody invested in my education. I am one of 7 girls. My mother
was busy.
She was. She's trying to find a boy. So she gave up. But growing up in the township, everybody just looked at her and said, "Shame, Ellen, you only have girls." So there will be other people's wives. Now when I go and visit her and I see their sons are still staying in their yards, I'm like, oh, what happened to that? Yeah. So it was very important for my mom and my grandmother that we went to school. I think also the never giving up thing, probably I took that from her, because it was like, it didn't work out, so what? Don't cry too long, get up, try again.
Last question, what's next for you?
I have finally got sponsorship to finish the Grand Slam. So this is the 7 summits, the North Pole and the South Pole. Only 6 to 7 people in the world have done that. I would like to be able to plant our flag in all those points and get this going.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
I look forward to chatting to you after your next journey.
Absolutely, I'd love to. Thank you for
Sarah.
having me.
Thank you.
Playing the best old school and R&B.